All right, so hello everyone, and welcome to the Mean Expert session as part of the Youth for Vienna Energy Forum. I'm very happy that you could join this session and hear from Dr. Victoria Alexeeva and learn from her work and about her career. And I'm very excited to be able to interview her today as well. So basically the structure is going to be that I'll briefly introduce myself and Victoria, and then Victoria will give a short presentation. And from there, I'll moderate a discussion where the audience will be able to ask questions. So first, just a little bit about myself very briefly. So my name is Kelsy Green. I know it says Teresa Mary, but I go by my middle name of Kelsy. And I'm currently pursuing a PhD in nuclear engineering at the University of Michigan, Ann Arbor in the United States. I also currently serve as the Climate Change Project Chair for the International Youth Nuclear Congress, where I have the opportunity to work with global organizations to share information on the roles that low carbon energy sources can play in the future clean energy transition, such as renewable energy and nuclear energy. And a really important aspect to the clean energy transition is economic and planning considerations, which is why I'm very, very excited to hear from Dr. Alexeeva today about her career and about her work. So without further ado, Dr. Victoria Alexeeva is an energy economist at the Planning and Economic Studies section of the International Atomic Energy Agency, or the IAEA for short. Victoria has been advising policymakers and stakeholders on various aspects of sustainable development, and her main area of expertise is related to macroeconomic impact assessments of energy transitions based on the application of large-scale models. Prior to joining the IAEA, she served in an advisory capacity to the European Commission on the Decarbonization Roadmap, Emissions Trading Scheme, carbon pricing, carbon leakage, and industrial competitiveness. Victoria holds a PhD in environmental economics from the University of Oldenburg and a master's in economics from Humboldt University. She also publishes broadly in the field of energy and climate change economics. So welcome, Dr. Victoria Alexeeva. We're happy to have you here. And if you'd like to maybe say a few words about yourself and then give your presentation.
Yes, thank you very much, Kelsy. I'm very excited to be with you today, and I really hope it will be interesting, maybe a relaxed conversation as well. And I'm really looking forward to interesting questions and exchange. Actually, it was already a short and good introduction to my career and to my work with IAEA. I'm an energy economist, and my area of expertise is macroeconomic impact assessment. And I hope I will be able to explain a bit more why IAEA is in this particular area. What does it mean, macroeconomic impact assessment, why it's important for energy transition. And I can start maybe with this little presentation where I have selected a project I was working on for several years with IAEA and 12 member states, and I hope it will be just a nice introduction to work we're doing here at the IAEA. So I hope I will be able to share my screen, and I am, and it. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see it.
You can see it well, yeah? So I can start. Just a project example, a few minutes on what a project could be. The project I have led with IAEA was designed to develop and enhance capacity building in selected member states. And basically, in the time span of 5 years, 12 member states, IAEA member states, were working on developing a macroeconomic impact assessment model. Developing, testing, reviewing, and the idea of this large-scale model was to help interested member states in IAEA member states to better understand macroeconomic impact assessment. Macroeconomic impact assessment actually looks into what happens to the entire economy during the energy transition. And it might be very different projects. It might be investment in certain energy technologies, nuclear or other technologies. It might be different energy policies, climate change policies. But what is different from an energy modeling is that we want to know what will happen in the entire economy, not necessarily, but of course including energy sector, but also what happens to other players, sectors, production plants, etc. So we have really kind of a broad view on positive or negative implications of energy transition. And this is quite important, particularly if we talk about negative implications, as policymakers, of course, are very interested in negative implications, because it would allow them actually to develop targeted measures to anticipate and to react to make energy transition just and fair. I think this is very, very important.
Victoria, could I make a quick comment? Do you want to
please.
put it in full screen mode, in presentation mode by chance?
Yes, I thought I did it. Okay.
There it goes. Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
It's better now. Yes, very much.
Thanks.
Yes. So this is maybe a bit surprising for you, but in my section, Planning and Economic Studies section, we do work with different types of quantitative models. And we do so upon request from member states, IAEA member states, to help to conduct energy studies on energy demand, energy supply. You see all these icons, they represent different types of models which can be applied. And the Empower model, the very last one at the bottom, is the model which has been developed within this project. And it would allow member states to quantify overall effects from energy investments or different types of energy policies. So this is what we did with 12 member states within this particular project. Well, why is it important? And of course, when we develop a project or work on a project, what is important for us is to have an impact and to have a relevance for our member states. And this particular model, Empower model, which stands for Extended Input-Output Model for Sustainable Power Production, helps those member states to conduct a macroeconomic impact assessment. The model has been already applied in 30 plus member states, and of course, the IAEA provides assistance to interested member states through Technical Cooperation Department. But there is also kind of benefits to science academia. A number of publications have been published in scientific journals and a book. And what was also very interesting is that upon the finalization of the project, a new course on input-output analysis, which is at the core of the model we have developed, has been introduced at our University of Zagreb. And if you're a bit more interested in this project, you can find a publication which is called Assessing National Economic Effects of Nuclear Programs, where you have individual chapters dedicated to results produced at the country level of participants from different countries. This is basically it, what I have prepared as a presentation. And now I think we can move to questions, and I would be very happy to say more about our work and my work in particular.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Victoria. That was a really great presentation. Good summary of what you do, which is very complicated. So that was really helpful to see what the IAEA is doing. So like I said at the beginning, we want this to be interactive with the audience. So you can either, if you want, post a question in the Q&A, and I'll be looking at the Q&A and I can ask your questions. Or if you would prefer, you can ask live. So you can ask to request actually like coming on camera and asking your question. So if you would, whichever one you would prefer in the audience, please feel free to do that throughout our conversation. But I'll probably just ask the first, one or two questions just to kind of get the conversation going. So first, I wanted to back up a little bit and just ask why you decided to go and work for the IAEA and how long you've worked there for. I think you've paused, Victoria. Let's hope it comes back. Unless it's me, can everyone else hear me? Maybe someone put something in the chat if you can hear me. Okay, thank you, Laura.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, you're back. Okay,
yes,
great.
Okay, very nice. Well, I do work for IAEA for 8 years now in the area of macroeconomic impact assessment. And well, joining the IAEA was really very exciting for me, particularly as I have found the opportunity to continue working on this macroeconomic impact assessment. I did so for European Commission in the past, and I truly believe that talk about energy transition, it's really, really very important to bring all the efforts to make the transition just and fair. Yeah, because it's clear there will be those who will be benefiting from energy transition, but there will be also those who will be kind of losing, So, and it's very, very important to think about those people as well. And macroeconomic assessment is a tool which helps you to see the entire picture, positive and negative implications. So I think kind of on a personal level, I think this idea of fairness and just transition is just very important for me. This is why I'm working on this macroeconomic impact assessment. And what is also very important to stress, that those implications, negative as well, are not visible at the first sight. Yeah, this is why you need to use large-scale models like the one we have developed here, because otherwise you would not think that this particular group of households might be affected. So, but it's very, very important. And I'm very glad to be able to continue this work with IAEA.
Yeah, I think along that point, one thing I got from your presentation too was that a clean energy transition may look different for different countries or different regions. And that's really important to be able to kind of go into those details to be sure that people from different regions and different countries aren't getting left behind, like you said. Maybe a little bit too along that, could you give some examples maybe of what some outputs have been from your model for different models?
Yes, we do produce actually impact assessment studies at the country level, but as I have mentioned before, we do so always in cooperation with member states. Yeah, so the member state requests a mission or training, a workshop where we introduce the model, the tool, and then we work together to develop a study. But of course, all the data, all the assumptions, and the way how the analysis will be done is coming from a member state. We provide an assistant on a model itself, how to use it properly in line with the latest scientific requests. So this is how it looks like. And at the end of the day, of course, a study is produced, which is then used by member states to build a national position. And the study, I have mentioned before that macroeconomic impact assessment is just one part of a models we are having at PAS, Planning and Economic Study section. So we have also a bunch of energy models which would help a member state to understand whether, for example, nuclear should be a part of energy mix in the future, yes or no. So that would be the first question to answer. And when we do talk about macroeconomic impact assessment, of course, we do consider different scenarios, with nuclear, without nuclear, and then we look into potential trade-offs, associated with investments in different energy technologies.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, it seems like the IAEA is doing some really great work with the member states and helping them to make their national programs. Let's see, check the Q&A really quick. We have a question from, I apologize if I pronounce this wrong, but from Sakiratu. Is there any difference between an impact evaluation of a renewable energy project and the impact evaluation of other types of projects?
Well, in principle, you can use this type of model to investigate effects from renewables or nuclear. Of course, you would not proceed in a different way, except the fact that, of course, the investment volume will be different, the local participation will be different. So this is what would drive the results. But the model is flexible. Macroeconomic models in general are flexible, and it's really advisable to do this type of analysis for different type of technologies, to understand what maybe performs better, what performs worse in terms of job creation, production implications. But this will depend very much on the data provided by the member state. So as you correctly said, Kelsy, the implications will be very, very different, because economic structure is different in countries, time horizon is very different. It's very important, of course, to develop what we call a baseline scenario, actually a representation of economy, let's say in 10 years from now, when we start building different types of energy programs, including nuclear, for example. So there are a number of steps which are similar, but of course there will be differences in terms of data and assumptions you're making.
Yeah, I suppose it is good too that these models are technology inclusive though. So if countries are interested in seeing if their path might want to go one way, they have the opportunity to model that before actually
absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's really a very critical point. Well, the models we are using here at PAS are, as we say, technology neutral, so different types of technologies will be used, and of course the optimum solution will be selected depending on circumstances of this particular country.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your question. And then the next question is from Harindra. I hope I pronounced that properly. He says, what can we do to make the public more comfortable with nuclear energy? I know that with recent advancements, the nuclear technology has become very safe, but people are still uncomfortable with it.
Yes, it's a very good question. Thank you very much for this. Well, I hope that events like this one are very helpful, because it provides a platform for an exchange. We can explain what we're doing and we can answer the questions. I very much agree that we need to do much more in terms of maybe education is not the right word, but in explaining the benefits of nuclear energy. It's very clear that nuclear energy is not solution to everyone. It's again will be depending very much on circumstances of a particular country. And we see, if I may take an example of a European country, for example, Poland is a country which is really seriously considering introduction of a nuclear energy program for a number of reasons. So of course, for some countries, it might be a solution. For other countries, it's not. But I think exchange, the way we're doing it now is really very, very helpful.
I agree. Yeah, and I find that more and more people, I've been in nuclear engineering for quite a few years now, and more people are receptive to just talking about it, which I think is the first step, just be able to talk to people and also be able to say, like you said, there are drawbacks for certain countries and it's just not going to be the right choice for them.
Yes.
But then being able to have these types of programs with the IAEA, which also continue to ensure safety, and then also have these kinds of economic and planning tools for countries if they're interested, is also helpful.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your question, Harindra, and I hope that more of you will ask questions. Please also remember that if you want, you can ask a question live, which is a very cool thing about this platform, so we can feel like we're all together non-virtually. But so there was another question I wanted to ask. There's a lot of young people, listening in right now. Do you have any advice for them if they're considering going into this kind of work in planning and economics? And do you think that they could make, a really big difference in the clean energy transition by going into this type of a career?
Absolutely. But I would say maybe the first step is actually the way how I did it. Yeah. So I think the first step is kind of to be curious about what types of jobs are actually available. And this is what we are doing now. So I think it's really a great start. But the second step is what I did, unfortunately, relatively late in my career, is better understanding your personal strengths and weaknesses. Because of course, if something is representing a strength in you, the probability is quite high that there will be an intrinsic reward, in doing this particular job. I think it's not necessarily that you have to go in this particular career path, which is great for me, but maybe there are different paths for different people, and I'm sure they are different, So I think what is really, really important is not just to understand what types of jobs are available, but also understanding, not just having a rough idea, but really have a very clear understanding what is your personal strength, what would you like to do. And then understanding this, I'm sure you will be able to find a great job where you can make a difference, whether it's nuclear energy or not nuclear energy, a different career path. I think it's very, very important. And I think it's very clear as well that the world will be very different from what we're having now. So, and of course, you have a bit of time to figure out what you would like to do. And I would really, really encourage you to find your own way and your own career path where you could make a difference.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I found that with my own career too, being able to reach out to people who had positions I thought might be interesting in the future and just email them and be like, would you mind chatting for a couple minutes on the phone, was really, really helpful to me. And eventually, like those people, some of them turn into my mentors. And so that would also be pretty helpful. I don't know if you maybe have anything to say about mentorship and how important that is in general, even just having mentors outside of your field, but who, you could always go to ask questions.
Yeah, well, I personally think that it's really very, very, very important. And it's rewarding to me as well, because of course, I have interns, some from time to time, and it's rewarding for me as well, because the way how I do it, it's not just one way. That there is an exchange. Well, that there is type of teaching coming from my side to mentee, but it goes, or I believe it should go in both directions. So I would learn from the person as well. So I think it can be designed in the way that it's really rewarding for both sides, a mentor and mentee. So I think it's really great opportunity for young professionals to get an advice, to be encouraged in their career path, to I said to have an advice as well is really very important. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And actually, on that note, the IAEA is very multidisciplinary and has a lot of different sections and different programs. Do you maybe want to just kind of cover a little bit about what the IAEA does in general, maybe for people who aren't as familiar?
Yes, well, IAEA, as you might know, actually works on nuclear energy and nuclear non-energy applications, and helps member states to establish programs if it's required. And as you said, Kelsy, absolutely rightly, is that IAEA has really a great bunch of staff and people with very different backgrounds, which is really great, because you are able, with different backgrounds, to provide a variety of options, a variety of views on a particular issue. In my section, for example, we have nuclear engineers, but we have energy economists like me as well. I don't have a nuclear background. I have backgrounds in quantitative modeling, energy modeling, but not nuclear. Then we have technical cooperation department, which is really a very important part of our work. Through technical cooperation department, IAEA provides assistance to member states in the area of nuclear energy, in the area of non-energy applications, such as agriculture, medicine applications, and many other areas. And of course, we should not forget about safeguards. So this is probably the area which is most prominent when you read newspapers and social media posts. So safeguards is a very important part of the work of IAEA.
Friend who works in safeguards at the IAEA, and she gets to travel all over the world, checking all different nuclear reactors in Argentina and different countries, and she loves it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And we have another question from the audience. This one comes from David. What options and strategies are available to promote nuclear energy in developing countries that are in initial stages of oil exploration?
Well, again, the way how we did is that we apply, as I said, those models to help member states to understand whether nuclear might be an option in the future, right? And for this to happen, you need to understand what will be your energy demand, whether the population is growing or industry is developing, and what will be your energy supply options. And how can you meet your energy demand as the lowest possible costs? So I think the first step from my perspective is a kind of a serious work on projecting energy demand, energy supply, and understanding what are your options and what are your limitations. I think it's also very important to explain what potential benefits might be associated with nuclear energy. And we know from a variety of studies that nuclear energy can really contribute to socioeconomic development in many countries. We know, if I just make an example from European countries, that nuclear energy, for example, help or contributes a lot to socioeconomic development in economically deprived regions. Yeah, so this is very, very important, where no other sources or limited amount of other sources for economic development are available. I think a clear explanation of potential benefits is very, very important. But of course, there are risks as well. So I think it's very important to explain what potential risks might be associated. And I think it's very important also to run sensitivity analysis and to challenge assumption you're making, to have really a full picture. I think from our perspective, this is really a starting point. And once this is done with policymakers, I think it's up to policymakers to decide how to communicate those results or potential benefits to the general public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of along that note too, what I was thinking about is a lot of different countries are now looking at a non-traditional type of reactors, at least non-traditional in the sense of what like France and the United States has traditionally built. They're looking at things like small modular reactors. And so I know like the IAEA is also very much involved in spreading information about small modular reactors and how those might fit into like specific like economic niches in different countries too.
Yes, yes.
Oh, actually, we have a question from Marcus about small nuclear reactors. He says, what is IAEA's role in the development of new nuclear technologies, such as small modular reactors or fusion?
IEA is, as I said before, working with different member states, and of course, this is the IAEA is a point where the information is collected, where different types of meetings are conducted to exchange the information, and not just internally but also externally. You know, in terms of writing and publishing reports to make this type of information available again to general public. So this is what typically the role of IAEA would be. But it's up to member states, of course, to develop technology, to promote technology. IAEA helps to kind of maybe to disseminate this information in published reports or meetings. This is what IAEA is doing.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that IAEA is will release guidelines for member states on how to license different types of non-light water reactors as well. And I know, at least for us in America, I do research on liquid metal cooled reactors. Like those types of guidelines have been helpful. So,
Right.
Yeah. And then we have a question from Satrio. I hope I pronounced that properly. They say to meet Paris Agreement goals, we need to reduce fossil fuel energy use. So through that notion, how do you see nuclear energy being able to lead the energy shift from dirty to clean energy? Will nuclear matter basically in the clean energy transition? And are there any big obstacles among other alternative clean energy? By alternative, I'm not exactly sure what you mean, Satrio. If you want to maybe comment, maybe you mean like geothermal or something, but.
Yes, well, we really believe that nuclear energy can be a part of the solution to climate change, and it can work alongside renewables. We have, for example, published a study on flexible nuclear, how nuclear technology can support renewables. You might know that wind and solar have a very specific characteristic, which is that those technologies do produce electricity when the weather conditions are good, and otherwise the level of production is zero or less than optimum. And this is where nuclear energy in general can help through flexible level of production. So there are ways where nuclear and renewables can work together. But of course, nuclear energy can also be used as a baseload technology, when we use or where a plant produces a constant level of electricity. And you might know as well that some European countries have decided to phase out coal. And some of them will be doing it already in the next 10 years, others in the next 20 years, but the trend is very clear. And then the question is how to substitute coal, which is really very, very bad for climate because of very high level of emissions. So what to do? And we are currently working on a brochure for COP26, where we have just looked at the distribution of coal plants and mines in European Union. And what we have seen is that really a large number of coal plants and mines in European Union are already now located in economically deprived regions, which means that if you phase it out, it makes the life for many people even worse in terms of employment, etc. Because the jobs will be gone. So it's also clear that new sources of economic development are needed to be brought into this particular region. And we know that nuclear might be a solution, not just in terms of supporting climate change policies, but also in terms of supporting socioeconomic development, because it does help generate jobs, not necessarily and not only in at the plant level as well, but as we know, many jobs, even much more jobs, will be created along the supply chain or just in the proximity of nuclear power plant, because people have to go to shops, people have to send their kids to schools. So there is a large number of jobs which are linked to, might be linked to nuclear energy programs. I think what is really important in terms of Paris Agreement and future climate change policies is to reduce emissions, but at the same time to be a motor and engine for socioeconomic development. And we know that nuclear energy can be such a solution.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also just to piggyback off of that too, there's a lot of work on like hybrid energy plants. So you would have wind and nuclear like on site together, working together. And they also have different work on, so like the type of reactors that I look at have a very high operating temperature. And so you can use them for things like industrial heat applications, because you're also producing heat as well. So there's these different kinds of like niches that nuclear can sometimes fit into, you know, that might work for different areas. So yes, a lot of applications. Yeah. And then Marcus asked, so he heard that so far nuclear takes a long time to ramp up and may not be as suitable as like natural gas peakers, which I would say probably depends on what kind of reactor it is and what it was licensed for. I know France actually does do peaking with certain plants, I think. But he said if you could please share the study on flexible nuclear or explain how nuclear plants can be used to complement intermittent wind and solar. And we only have about like 2 more minutes, so.
Yeah, maybe just 1 minute. I would be happy to share our study, so where you have where you can really read a bit more about how nuclear can be used. And the study is dedicated to technical aspects on the one hand, but also to economic aspects. So I would, I have it somewhere here. This one, yes. So I hope you can see it. It's this one. Non-based operation nuclear power plants, load following and frequency control modes of flexible operation. So I really, you can download it from our website, and I would really highly recommend you to read the study.
I will try to find that and put it in the chat in 1 second. I think we have time for one more question before wrapping up, Victoria. This is the last question I think we have, is do you think we can categorize nuclear as a clean energy source? And could you elaborate on risks maybe associated? So maybe just a really quick one and then we can wrap up.
Yes, I really believe, and IAEA believes that nuclear energy can make a difference, and it can be a part of solution to climate change problem. So that would be my final word in this session.
I would definitely agree with that. And I think, like you said before, just us being here and having this conversation is really helpful, and being able to learn from each other is really great in these types of online conferences. So with that, I think that is all of our time. So Victoria, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. That was really, really interesting. I feel like we could ask 100 more questions.
Thank you very much. It was really great to talk to you, and maybe we can meet at a different event or different opportunities. So I'm always available to talk to you guys. So thank you very much.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And thank you for all of your questions. For those in the audience, those are great questions. So it really helped with the conversation. So great. Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of your youth forum, youth conference. So goodbye, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.